So I'm going to make that mandatory. When I say good afternoon, I want to hear woo woo. There you go. I want to thank our greeters. We had Steve Gustafson and Rosalind Oglesby. Thank you. And Stephen didn't know he was going to be a greeter. He just stepped in, so thank you for doing that. Next, we have Sharon Miracle with our invocation.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to keep this hopefully sweet and short. So we've all likely seen or heard the statements online, particularly in light of yesterday's events, praying for victims. I pray for the victims. I pray for peace. Let's stop the gun violence. That's been growing skepticism about the power of prayer and how flip we've become about just saying, I pray for those folks. And it lets us kind of move on to the next thing or the next thought. And it feels now like there's a lot of skepticism about the power of prayer. Why aren't things changing? Is that really doing anything? So just want to share with you a couple things. Christian philosopher Soren Kierkegaard actually said, the function of prayer is not to influence God, but to rather change the nature of the one who prays. If we're not constantly praying about issues, whether social or personal, and we cease to change it, we ought to re-examine the nature of our prayers and the reason for our prayer. Prayer is action. And prayer needs to lead to further outward action with those focusing on alleviating hurt and suppressing evil. Pope Francis said, you pray for the hungry, then you feed them. Or Christians may recognize these quotes from the Bible. I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Prayer is accompanied by care. Care for those that are hurting and oppressed and for the lost and the weary. As Rotarians, we frequently have the opportunity to impact other people in our community. We also get to learn about programs and people who are doing great things dedicated to improving the lives of others, like we're going to hear today. So today, I'm not going to ask you to bow your heads if you're inclined and pray with me. I'm actually going to simply put out a challenge to take the time to ponder about the actions that you will take and make the change to act to alleviate evil, pain, and suffering in and around you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Sharon. You may be seated. I want to welcome our guests. I don't know why I do this, where I have everybody sit and then I make the guests stand back up. But guests, can you stand up and let's recognize you? Thank you for visiting Rotary today. We love having guests, so feel free to come back. Rotarians, invite other guests. We appreciate seeing you here. Thank you. I get to present a blue badge today, Magali Solis. If you can join me up here. And I know we have more coming because we had a full house this morning. Congratulations, Magali. I just want to share a couple member recognitions. Is Amy Mabe here? Well, I want to share that she's now the team leader and in addition to being a realtor at Keller Williams. So I know she's not here, but let's congratulate her anyway. And is Sean Kinney here? I guess I'm celebrating too, but Sean Kinney, I heard, recently competed in the Badwater 267 VR, which means he ran 260 miles in less than 30 days at a 10-minute a mile pace. So that's amazing. So be sure to email those two people and congratulate them. Now Felix, join me up on stage.
President Aaron, fellow Rotarians. So I'm a member of the World Service Committee, and we applied for a grant to repair and do some maintenance on the playground that at Little Hands Big Hearts in Trujillo. We built that back in 2018, funded by Rotary International grant. I would like to I'd like to plan a work party to get things accomplished in the later part of April, and I'm looking for volunteers. There's some travel funds allowed, and you can probably contact me, and we can get at least 6 Rotarians in a group, maybe more, but that would fit comfortably in van. We also would, the plans is to fly into an island of Roatan, which belongs to Honduras, and it's about a 2.5-hour ferry ride from there. We usually do that the following day. And then we have a van, rent a van, and it's about a 6-hour, providing that I drive, and I do. If anybody else drives, about 8, so be willing to go. Anyone is interested, just give me a call or let Carolyn know. Thanks.
Thank you, Felix. Now I'm showing an announcement about our auction 2024 kickoff, but I don't know who's doing it, so I'm hoping you're ready. Okay.
Hey, Hummel.
Hey, Quinn, what's up?
I have a small favor to ask of you.
Sure, how can I help?
You could co-chair the Rotary auction with me in 2024.
Oh, Quinn, what did I do to you?
Okay. It's not a small ask. But do you remember a few years ago when I was going to chair and then COVID happened and I had that circus theme and you loved that theme?
I did love that. I do remember that, and it was awesome.
Okay, see? Now imagine being in charge with me and we can do whatever we want to make it the most amazing auction ever.
I do like possessing authority.
Right?
Okay, I'm in. But with the circus theme, there's an incredibly fine line between Hall of Fame worthy and just plain tacky. What kind of budget do I get for this?
Who said budget? Who said budget?
Yep, you're good. Damn it, Quinn, you've already brought Norton on board to curb my spending. I was told I would have authority.
No way. Norton is here to help us stay organized and oversee the finances, not control them. It's Carolyn that we have to worry about for budget.
Yeah, I'm definitely cool with spending money. What do you guys think for a theme?
The vibe is going to be old-timey circus with a touch of Moulin Rouge. Think Prohibition era, low lighting, and a mysterious feel.
I'm okay with that. That's a cool theme. So you want the guests to get this old-time circus tent feel?
Kind of. They're definitely going to feel like they're in a tent.
What don't I know?
We're going to build a circus tent.
That sounds awesome. That's not expensive at all.
Oh, it's going to be awesome, Norton.
You know what? We need some actors involved in this too. You know, some professionals who could do a circus act or two. That would be amazing.
Yeah, great. Paid professional actors.
You know who we need? That one guy, that one auctioneer. You know the guy who's done the last couple of children's village auctions? He's fantastic, and I think he'd be a perfect fit for our theme. I think he may even have some connections to some actors for us.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sounds expensive.
Come on, that one guy. You know what? I think I have a video. Check this out.
That's right, my fellow Rotarians. It is officially an auction year. It is with great honor that we formally announce our theme for the Downtown Yakima Rotary Auction 2024, Dinner and a Show Under the Big Top.
Yes, Rotarians, it'll be an auction like you've never seen before. Our auctioneer for the event is Kevin Joyce from Enjoy Productions in Seattle. Enjoy Productions partners with Seattle's renowned Teatro Zinzani to dazzle audiences with world-class acrobatics, comedy, strength, and circus acts. And yes, we're bringing them to downtown Yakima Rotary. Yeah.
Yeah, they convinced me it's worth it. We've had some great auction themes in the past, but this will be a night to remember. A night of revelry, and not only includes fun, but fundraising for Rotary charities. You will be enchanted by professional Circus Olay actors, mingling with guests before the dinner, and showcasing special talents once you're in the big tent.
The theme, the decorations, and the level of talent we have already secured for the auction has everyone on the committee very excited. However, our event will only be as strong as we as a club can make it. With that in mind, we're asking you to get involved in whatever capacity you can. There's a simple sign-up sheet on your tables if you're willing to help with the event, whether it be joining a committee, donating an item, procuring items, decorating the day before, or anything else. Please sign up indicating so, and someone from the committee will contact you.
The auction will take place right here at the Yakima Convention Center on the evening of November the 16th, 2024. Your circus tickets, or should I say your save the dates, will be in your mailbox soon.
I can already smell the popcorn. Whether you choose to dress in a period theme or don your best black tie garb, this is going to be an event you don't want to miss.
Mark it on your calendar and spread the word far and wide. Invite your family, your friends, and any potential Rotarians and tell them to join us for dinner and a show under the big top.
Great job. I'm calling them the Mikes and Quinn. I was wondering why they ran off stage so fast when the video, I was like, what's going to happen? I have to tell you, if you've never seen Kevin Joyce in action, you got to come just to see him as an auctioneer. He's not just an auctioneer, he's an entertainer. I know, I've worked with him for years. Thanks for stealing him from us. But he really is a lot of fun, and you just can't miss it. Nice job, you guys. Super excited to attend the auction this year and invite plenty of people. Thank you. All right, Kelly Connaughton for Sergeant at Arms.
That sounds so great. I am very excited about that. That just sounds terrific. How many of you have never been to an auction before? Pay a buck. Give me a break. Guess what today is besides the day we announced the auction? That's very funny, Brad. It's not payday. For some people, I guess it is payday, isn't it? Congratulations, Charlie. And what a better 9 years it's been for all of us with you here in Yakima. That's great, actually. Today is National Canadian Flag Day, February 15th. I had to find a Canadian flag. I have a t-shirt from a pot shop in Canada, but I didn't think that was important. But I do have my 5060 pin. How many of you are from Canada? Raise your hand. Great, pay a buck because it's your National Flag Day. How many of you have been to Canada? Pay a buck because you visited. There you go. Canada is a great partner of ours in our district, and I love going to Canada. Guess what else today is? There's a lot going on February 15th. I just want you to know. Today is National Gumdrop Day. National Gumdrop Day. How many of you eat gummies? Pay a buck, because today's the day that gummies are celebrated. The early origin of gummies or gumdrops is really unclear, but the gum in gumdrops comes from an Arabica tree. How many of you knew that? It's believed that the gumdrops were first produced commercially in the United States in the late 19th century. It's been here for a long time, and it's a very popular item, and particularly because it was originally produced as an item to take medicine. How many of you take gummy vitamins? Pay a buck. It's in celebration of your gummy day. What year do you think gumdrops was first introduced? 1964, not right. That's the year you were probably born. 1869 If you didn't guess 1869, pay a buck. Guess what else today is? Today is National Singles Day. Now, of course, the day after Valentine's Day, the single people in America would say, to hell with them. We're having a day ourselves. Because frankly, there's absolutely nothing else about Singles Day anywhere that you can Google. So they just made it up. So I want to pose to you, true or false, how many single adults live in the United States? What percentage of the population are single adults in the United States? If you guessed 45%, you are right. Everyone else pay a buck. 45% of the adults in the United States are single. Guess who is the most eligible single bachelor? Brad Pitt. Pay a buck. Brad Pitt, if that was your guess, pay $1. And guess who is the most eligible bachelorette in the United States right now? In the world, in the universe? Taylor Swift. Pay a buck in honor of Taylor. Of course, it's Taylor Swift. And last but not least, how many of you can tell me, by show of hands, how many of you collect Susan B. Anthony coins? All right, everybody else pay a buck in honor of Susan B. Anthony. Today is her birthday. Susan B. Anthony coin was introduced in 1979. How many of you were born in 1979? Pay $1 in honor of Susan B. Susan B. Anthony, for those of you who do not know, was a Quaker. She was a strong advocate for women's rights, but also a strong advocate for civil rights and the American Anti-Civil Liberties Society. She was the first woman to be a member of that society. Susan B. Anthony was 17 years old when she started her career in being an advocate for civil rights. And there are a lot of people, all of us are much better because of her. And in honor of Susan B., I'd like everyone to pay $1, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. So Valentine's Day was yesterday, and on social media, I saw people saying, oh, I had a great Galentine's Day, and I thought that was like an error. And I guess that's like when all the girls hang out on Valentine's Day, it's called Gal. How many of you have heard of that? Pay $1. No. It was new for me. So Jennifer Bleesner is going to introduce our speakers for today.
Blair Daly is the founder of Washington Initiative for Boys and Men, which does advocacy journalism and grassroots political organizing focused on boys and men's issues. Joining him today is Jamie Holter, a fellow core member of his advocacy team. Their best-known political work so far involves working to get a bill passed to create a Washington State Commission on Boys and Men. A total of 14 legislators sponsored the bill in 2024, which was the bill's third year of unfortunately falling short of getting a public hearing. Among the sponsors of the Commission on Boys and Men are an equal number of Democrats and Republicans, and half are women. The purpose of a Commission on Boys and Men would be to make recommendations for policies and programs to help improve the well-being of Washington's boys, male youth, and men. Like the Washington State Women's Commission, this commission would have certain areas of focus, specifically these 5: education, fatherhood and family, mental and physical health, careers, jobs, and financial health, and our court systems. The statistics are alarming, and here are just a few. 77% of victims of suicide are male. 71% of deaths from drug overdoses are male. 60% of high school dropouts are male. 94% of those in prison are male. And yet only 25% of mental health counselors are men, and only 16% of social workers are men. Our boys and our men are disproportionately struggling in particular ways that deserve to be taken seriously. Please welcome Blair and Jamie.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you for inviting us to speak today. So I will need the clicker which is where? Is it right there?
It's right here.
Blindness, I'm sorry. Okay, it was right there. So on the screen here are the 4 main points I want to make today over the next 20 minutes or so. The first being that there's actually a broad set of issues that we could call boys and men's issues. These are areas where males are struggling. Of course, everyone's issues affect everyone else, and so really everyone's issues are everyone's issues. But many of us are familiar with the concept of gender gaps, which typically highlight female disadvantage. And what I'm talking about are areas that could be called male gender gaps, or disparities affecting Washington's male population. The second point is one that might sound strange to some, but I believe that boys and men are a population group that's pretty severely lacking advocacy in the public arena. My third point is that WIBM, Washington Initiative for Boys and Men, we exist to meet that advocacy need. In a credible way, providing trustworthy information, having relationships with people that have real expertise in these topics, and taking an approach that is middle of the road, that is not motivated by anger or resentment, that is nonpartisan, that is moderate. And my last point is that we are wide open for cooperation, and we want to work with any of you who are interested in working together, and later I'll share some examples of what that could look like. So what I do with WIBM is a mix of advocacy journalism and grassroots political organizing. So this slide here is about the advocacy journalism piece. And these are headlines of a sample of articles that I've published. So in the 3 years I've been doing this, I've put out over 150 articles or blog posts. And each time I publish a new article, I send it out to my email list and I post it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Because we advocate for boys and men on issues across the board, there are so many available topics that are fair game for me to cover. And I don't want to only be producing content that is sad, that's highlighting ways in which males are struggling. I want to also be producing positive videos and articles. So for example, one of my most read articles is about a world-class parkour group. Some of you know parkour is this very athletic style of movement that involves running and jumping and flipping and spinning. It's really impressive to watch. I have become a fan on YouTube. And in my article, what I do is I highlight ways in which these young men in this world-class parkour group exemplify certain positive masculine traits. Another one of my most read articles is about the 2003 Eddie Murphy movie called Daddy Daycare. And I got tipped off to watch this movie by a friend, and he said there might be some valuable lessons there, and there really are. And so I came up with 7 important lessons that we can learn from Daddy Daycare. And people find that on Google all the time, so that's my most read article by far. Now, the 2 examples I've shared so far are not Washington State specific, but as you can see from the headlines here, the vast majority of the stuff I put out does focus on matters here in Washington State. Before we dive into some statistics about boys and men, I know you've heard some and I'll show you more, we should directly address skepticism about the idea that boys and men are a population group whose interests and whose well-being are lacking advocacy in the public arena. After all, don't we live in a male-dominated society? Isn't this still a man's world? Isn't the president a man? Most people in Congress, the governor of our state, most CEOs. You could look at information like that and make a case that this is a male-dominated society, or a society that advantages males. You could look at an entirely different set of indicators and make a case that males are a disfavored group. Where I land is that Washington State in 2024 is a place where it's neither a male-dominated nor a female-dominated society. Neither men nor women are an oppressed class, and our society does not privilege or advantage males or females in a way that on the whole makes life easier for either girls or boys, for women or for men. Having said that, the terms gender equality and gender equity are still used pretty much interchangeably with the idea of advancement for women and girls. And that shows that our vision of equality and equity might be missing something. It might be missing some people. If you doubt that a lack of public advocacy for boys and men is hurting our communities, I hope that the statistics we'll look at will cause you to at least consider it. Consider that the energetic movements in this state toward equity and social justice and equal opportunity for all might have blind spots when it comes to boys and men. So this next section of slides, I'll present a whole bunch of statistics on issues that we could call boys and men's issues, in the sense that these are areas where gender-based or sex-based disparities or gaps or inequities exist, where males are the struggling sex. All of these statistics I'll show are Washington state level statistics, so they're local, they're not national. And I'll go through them pretty fast, but some of these are on the one-pager that's on everyone's table, that blue document there. That's the one-pager for our legislation that would create a state commission on boys and men. So some of these statistics are there. All of these statistics are in a PDF that's on our website, wibm.us. Actually, I'll explain now. There are two websites. One that's on the one-pager there is waboysandmen.org. That website is specifically about the campaign to create a commission on boys and men. So it's specifically about that legislation. And then my advocacy journalism goes on wibm.us. That's the other website. So I'll use this first slide here to orient you to the format of each of the upcoming slides. Green will always represent males, and on each slide I show a statistic and a photo that represents that issue, and the source of the statistic is at the bottom. I will go through these pretty fast, but the impression I want to get across is that it's a pretty broad range of issues. It's not just suicides, it's not just homelessness. It's quite a few different things. And also I want to convey that WIBM is a credible source for statistics and information on boys and men. I do routinely update these slides as new government statistics come out, and I go and I get them myself, so these are verified, and I'm always interested in better and better sources for reliable data and for statistics that actually tell us something useful, something meaningful. So for each slide, we'll basically just look at the headline, which is the topic of that particular slide. We'll notice there's some degree of disparity or inequity or gap that males are experiencing, but we won't go deep into the issues. This first slide is about those who are dying from drug overdoses. You can see not only that the raw numbers are going up in recent years, but that the gender gap is also widening. Specifically, deaths by opioid overdose. Same thing, most recent year for which we have data, 2022, 72% in the state of Washington, male. Alcohol abuse, majority men. Victims of suicide overall, majority men. And among youth suicides in particular, slightly larger majority. I appreciate our guests from NAMI who are here today working on mental health issues. I'll pause here and introduce Jamie and have you speak a little bit.
Hello, my name is Jamie Holter, and I work for King County Government on the other side. How many of you in here have sons or grandsons? How many of you were worried? How many of you how many of you are worried about them? Doesn't mean that you're responsible for what happens, but you love them. You love your boys. I'm a mother of two sons. I have a 24-year-old and a 30-year-old. I have been coaching boys soccer since these boys were 5 years old. And it's funny, Blair and I were working together at King County, and I had just had yet another really sad conversation with my 30-year-old. I was so sad. And we got into our one-on-one, and I was like, can I just tell you how sad I am? I can't do anything. I watch my son, his friends, these boys that I have known since they were 5 years old. They're growing up. They're doing fentanyl. They have alcohol poisoning. They're committing suicide. They are having babies and then not taking responsibility for these babies. I think I was a pretty good mom, but something is missing. And then a woman in my community whose son was amazing. He played golf, he played the trumpet, he played in everything. He went away to college for 1 year, came back, and was working in the Rite Aid up the street. And he came out at lunch, took a gun, and shot himself in the head at the Rite Aid. It killed our community. We were all devastated. And I said to my youngest the next day, "What are we missing? We don't want this. I don't know what to do." And I was sad. And I said to Blair, "I'm stuck." And he said, "Let me tell you about a program that I'm working on." And since then, I have donated my skills and abilities to participate in this program. And I can honestly say, Blair and I don't have a whole lot in common when it comes to side of the aisle, but what we've been able to do is come together because we really care about the boys and the men in our life, and he's just getting started on these statistics. And I ask you to take a look and think about these, and then at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about what's next.
So we heard earlier mental health counselors. This is an area where not every male who's struggling with their mental health needs to see a man, but it would be good for them to have the option, and we hear that quite a few men would like to be able to talk to another man. This is a profession that, my understanding at least, is that is becoming increasingly female-dominated, so a couple decades down the road, it may be quite hard to find a male counselor. My understanding is among young folks going into this profession, it's like maybe 90% female. That's not one that I verified, so I'm not showing you that statistic, but it's a concern. Same thing with social workers. Social workers are empowered, often by government, to solve problems, and many of those problems, you could say, fall into the boys and men's issues realm, where it's more boys and men who are struggling with those problems. And it would be great to have more male representation in that field, more understanding about boys and men. So switching to homelessness, specifically among the unsheltered homeless in our state, 70% male. Among those experiencing homelessness in general, 63% male. Those who are in prison, 94% male. There's a bit there about the cost per incarcerated individual, $60,000 a year per incarcerated individual, and this kind of skips ahead to the Commission on Boys and Men conversation, but somebody pointed out, hey, establishing a commission on boys and men, most of these things cost a little bit of money. If you kept 4 people, if this kind of initiative managed to keep 4 people per year out of prison, that would pay for a state commission on boys and men. I thought that was a compelling way to describe it. 4 people not falling down the path that ends them behind bars, and that pays for something like this. Jail, same thing. Youth and juvenile rehabilitation, it starts early, 90% male. The average stay of a male is quite a bit longer than a young woman who's in juvenile rehabilitation. Among missing persons, slight majority male. Many of us are familiar with the concept of missing and murdered Indigenous women or missing and murdered Indigenous people. Among Indigenous people, these are statistics that I did look up, almost half of the missing are male, and certainly a majority of the murder or the homicide victims are male. Among those with lacking health insurance, it's a majority male. And then we get into the occupations where it's very normal for us to understand that men tend to take the more dangerous jobs, and that's going to lend itself to more workplace fatalities and injuries. But I do think about how I think this belongs among the gender equity or gender equality conversation. It's okay to look at disparities everywhere. It doesn't mean necessarily that discrimination is the cause, but it's okay to acknowledge it. And also to appreciate men who work dangerous jobs. That's one of the articles that I enjoyed writing the most, was I interviewed 5 different men who work dangerous jobs, and the headline was just appreciating Washington's men who work dangerous jobs. And it's a firefighter, a pipe layer, and so something I choose to point out. Workplace injuries, majority male. Victims of homicide, majority male. I also think of the act of going to war and sending our military into war as an issue that does have some imbalance there in terms of whose bodies that we're putting on the line there. So among Washingtonians specifically who've died serving our military since 2001, 97% male. Single parent households. Being a single parent is a very difficult job, and a majority of single parents are moms. And what that also means is that we've got a lot more boys than we have girls who are growing up in an environment where they don't have regular interaction with a same-sex parent to guide them into a healthy adulthood. So that's part of the equation. Another part of the equation pertaining to single-parent households, and when we talk about trying to empower and improve the well-being of boys and men, is that we want capable dads, and the burden on many single parents is quite severe, and so if we have very capable parents, both moms and dads, that's going to make a difference. This is one of the rare slides that I'm going to show you where I disaggregate by race or ethnicity, just to show that there are some pretty stark differences when it comes to single-parent families in the state of Washington. And then this pertains specifically to residential time, like custody arrangements after divorce. This is unfortunately the most recent data available. It's from 2016, but you can see on the right side are arrangements where children spend more time with mother, left side more time with father. But that bar in the middle is a cause for celebration. Not too long ago, 50-50 shared custody of children was pretty rare, is my understanding, and now it's become quite a bit more common. A couple states have even made it a law that shall be the default when parents divorce, and assuming there are no factors that lead a parent to be viewed as unfit, the default should be 50-50, and I can see some good arguments for that. Among high school dropouts, majority male. And then we get into education. That's one of the key areas that we focus on. It was mentioned that education would be one of the focus areas for a commission on boys and men, because we see some serious ways in which our school environments may not be as boy-friendly environments as they could be. And that has the outcomes sort of point to that conclusion in the sense that we have, for the most part, closed the maths achievement gap. And so I don't have the math numbers up on the screen, but I can tell you we've looked at the numbers as far as what students are achieving standard in mathematical performance, and there's not much of a gender gap there. In some cases, it's slight advantage to males, slight advantage to females. But when it comes to reading and writing, when it comes to literacy, there's a really important skill in the modern era. Boys really are falling behind. Elementary school teachers, this is another occupation where, boy, I see a case for value in gender diversity in this field. There are some occupations where it's like, does it make much of a difference whether you have a man or a woman doing that? Maybe not so much, but particularly with what we've looked at in terms of boys growing up without fathers, and then they come to schools without men, I think there's some positive difference we could make here. And wouldn't it be a great thing if policymakers, if leaders signaled to our schools of education, to our universities that are training our teachers, that they want to see more male involvement? And I am seeing some signals about that, but I think it could be stronger. And I think probably some more efforts could be made to make teaching a profession that is welcoming for men, and an occupation where more men are involved, particularly in our elementary schools. And then we get into enrollment in higher education. So looking at community colleges, you can see the gap there. Undergraduate enrollment in our four-year public universities, 45% male. Not as extreme as other places that we've heard, but certainly underrepresentation, you could say, among males on college campuses, and then the postgraduate enrollment as well. Okay, so that was a series of statistics. There are more issues I could have gotten into, but that was a little sample. And now I want to pause to make a point which pertains to this matter of boys and men's issues cross racial and ethnic lines. So it's important to point out that boys and men's issues transcend racial and ethnic lines. The statistics we just looked at were pretty much, for the most part, just comparing Washington State's population, boys and men, and women and girls. But when we're able to get data sets that allow for double disaggregation, meaning we can slice the numbers and look at disaggregate by both sex or gender and race or ethnicity, we see that these gaps, these gender-based disparities exist within each racial and ethnic group. So talking about the idea of a state commission on boys and men, it's sometimes been posed to us, couldn't you just make it about black boys and men? Or couldn't you just make it about black and brown boys and men? Or couldn't you just make it about BIPOC boys and men? The reason we reject that suggestion is that the data shows clearly that boys and men's issues apply in all racial and ethnic groups. And so while it's true that the disparities are often most severe among Washington's black population, Hispanic population, Alaska Native American Indian population. These disparities exist in all groups, and so we think that's important to state. On this slide, I just want to briefly expose you to our findings from a little research project we did regarding grant funding. The takeaway here is that our governments and foundations and philanthropists may be underinvesting in boys and men. I used the most robust database that houses grant funding information and searched the most recent 5-year period for which we have data available, and I isolated the different populations served by the grants. For grants serving women and girls in Washington, I found over 2,000 grant makers or funders, over 13,000 grants, and over $700 million in total dollar value. For grants serving boys and men in Washington, it was under 1,000 grant makers, about 3,500 grants, and under $200 million in total dollar value. So that shows about a 4-to-1 spending ratio. Our website has the full article that shows our complete methodology for this and the detailed findings. And there's also an advocacy deficit for men. This is one of the earlier points I made. So I did a different research project using a database of nonprofit organizations. And I found that there are about 50 nonprofits in Washington advocating for women and girls for every one that advocates for boys and men. So that's a 50-to-1 ratio. And that's actually a very conservative estimate of the imbalance in advocacy. Again, our complete methodology and findings for this little research project are on our website. I'll also say this doesn't account for the advocacy that's embedded within government, with different government commissions and initiatives that focus on bringing about gender equity. So this brings us to the idea of a state commission on boys and men, which, as the title of this presentation alluded to, would be the nation's first such commission at the state level. We're 3 years into this effort of trying to get a bill passed that would establish this commission. We have strong bipartisan support in terms of the sponsors of this bill, with Representative Mary Dye as the prime sponsor of the House bill and Senator John Lovick as the prime sponsor of the bill in the Senate. We happen to have a perfectly equal split of women and men sponsoring it. 20 nonprofit organizations have endorsed it. 25 articles from different news media have written about it. And again, the one-pager is a good source for succinct information explaining more about the bill. Again, I'll clarify, the website about the bill is waboysandmen.org, and I believe that's on the one-pager. And then where my articles are listed is wibm.us. That's the website specific for Washington Initiative for Boys and Men. We have so far not been able to get a public hearing for this bill, so for 3 years now it has died in the legislature without a hearing. Going forward, succeeding with this bill will continue to be a goal, and we'll pursue other goals as well. And I want to appeal to you, let's work together on that. We are all about working together with others. Anyone who's interested, Jamie will share a bit more about ways in which she found that she had things to offer for this movement, for this particular advocacy arena. So some examples: guest write an article. If you have some expertise, again, boys and men is a very broad topic, so there's all kinds of ways to connect something that you might be passionate about or interested in, or have an interesting story to tell, where I'd love to be a vehicle through which you could tell that story. And the main things that are in common about all my pieces are pretty simple. It has some kind of angle related to boys and men, and it has some kind of Washington state-focused angle. So we're all here in Washington. That's enough, pretty much, of a Washington state-focused angle to justify it. Or we can work together on an article. Some people don't consider themselves writers, but they have a story to tell. I love to co-write pieces. Just open a Google Doc, and we'll go back and forth until we arrive at an article that we're both happy with. The second bullet point, or allow me to interview you. That interview can be in writing or over video. So it's so great that we can have recorded Zoom conversations, and then I can take our conversation, it could be an hour, and I can cut it down into like the 5 or 10 minutes most interesting stuff that we each said, and now I'm highlighting just an additional voice, someone else who has additional perspective to offer to this realm of advocacy. The legislation, I mentioned that over 20 nonprofits have endorsed it so far. We love when we can list more nonprofit organizations that specialize in different areas on our website, where we list all those organizations. We put their logo, we put a name of the organization and a link to their website. If you are involved in a nonprofit organization that has any interest, some overlap in what we're working on, Maybe see if you can help get permission for us to add them to our website as endorsing the bill. That's really all I need is permission to add us to the website. I don't need you to promise that you're going to write a letter or you're going to advocate for it in any way. It's nice if you do, but really all I need is permission to just say, yeah, our leadership says we endorse that particular bill. And nonprofit organizations with 501c3 status can endorse legislation. Not candidates, but they can endorse legislation. Help us advocate to legislators. If you have relationships with legislators, tell them about this. Maybe advocate to them about it. Invite us to speak other places if there are other venues where this might be an appropriate topic to share about. And I want to emphasize my invitation, please join our email list. So that's the last bullet point there. If you were to open it on your phone now, wibm.us, you scroll to the bottom, you find where you can put in your email address. And I send about 1 email per week, and like I said, you can tell just from the subject line and the headline what story I'm putting out. And so that's basically what it is. You're basically subscribing to this advocacy journalism, kind of like a Substack. Those of you who subscribe to Substack newsletters, that's kind of what this is. So before I conclude, I'll just put this picture up. I've been to Olympia 4 times now so far during this legislative session and have had great conversations with so many legislators. Senator John Lovick is in the picture on the left. I love when I go down to Olympia accompanied by fellow advocacy partners like Jamie, like Ann, who's another woman who's really involved in this. And I'll pass it over to Jamie. Before we pause for questions, if there end up being time, pass it over to Jamie to say a bit more. Would you like to? Sure. Okay.
So as I said, I wasn't really sure how I could get involved, but I knew a couple of things. I was in law school, and so I went to my law school professor and I said, hey, I'd like to make this as my topic for my paper. It's a Washington Commission on Boys and Men, and he was a former legislator, and he was like, yeah, that'll never fly. And I was like, can I finish my sentence? He goes, nope, nobody will ever support it. Nobody will ever advocate for it. And I was like, well, I'm gonna try. So when I looked at the things that I could do, I had Blair over and said, let's just talk about all of these things. And so what I helped create was the one-pager. And this one-pager is pretty darn good because it succinctly explains in a way that helps people understand that this is a boys and men's issue, and it's not at the expense of girls and women, because I am a huge advocate for girls and women. But as I said, I am also the parent of 2 boys, and I'm seeing things that make me sad. So I did this. The other thing I do, because I worked at WashDOT for 10 years, I feel like I know everybody, I introduced Blair to Senator Lovick, and from that we were able to get a bill that was coming up through the Senate side. So if you have a skill, if you have a talent, if you have boys or men in your life, if you ask yourself, why is it that all the mass shooters are boys and men? And what can we do about that? I don't know, look at what happened yesterday. These are real issues that are affecting everybody. All those kids there yesterday, all those kids, they didn't have anything to do with anything. But this kind of advocacy can help address the things that are causing people to end up on the wrong side of the statistics. So think about what you do. You're all professionals. I've talked to so many interesting people here, and Cheryl there, she's doing her part. Think about what you can do. Think about the men and boys in your life. Contact us. Just do one thing. You know, last year, we ended up talking to this guy from the University of Oregon. He was doing a master's program on a men's resource center. And we did a little Zoom meeting. How's that going? He goes, oh yeah, it was great. When I first did it, everybody made fun of me. Men's resource center, right. And he said, now I'm at capacity. I have so many men who come in and say, gosh, I'm so glad you're doing this. That is a model for many other colleges. You're giving boys and men an opportunity to come in and talk to someone. We looked at the mental health statistics. So think about those things. Join this organization. Be an advocate. Think of where you can make a difference for all those people that you were thinking about when you raised your hand.
Thank you. I heard we have 5 minutes for questions. If anyone wants to raise their hand. Yes?
only. And I'm just wondering, I'm sorry should I repeat this? But I'm just noticing we are getting worse. It's not like we've hit a plateau, that every year seems to be worse than the year before, and it's almost an urgent situation if we're going to turn the tide of these fatalities and discover some answers quickly. But I'm wondering, have you seen that, or are you feeling that too?
Yeah, I'm in this position where my expertise basically has become the guy who can rally advocacy, focus on boys and men's issues across the board. So I'm not coming with a specific agenda of policies that I want to get passed. Now, I have some ideas. I follow the research. I see compelling ideas for making improvements for how we can solve some of these things or improve them. But we're kind of actually a step back from that. We're like, let's make it someone's job to close some of these male gender gaps. Let's empower some organizations so that day in and day out, there's an executive director, for example, of a commission on boys and men whose job it is to be focused on these issues. Otherwise, we tend to measure certain things, and if we don't measure certain things, and if we don't make it someone's job to focus on certain things, then those things can not make it on the agenda. They can be ignored a little bit. So trying to create advocacy capacity both within government, with a commission, for example, and outside of government, like what I'm doing, we hope to get to the point where we can be in a position to push some of these solutions and get bills passed and make better policies and programs. But I'm not that guy right now with this whole set of things that I am trying to get passed. We're kind of a step back from there. Jamie?
Well, when you look at what the Women's Commission did in the last 2 years with regard to Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision, a lot of that heavy lift was by the Women's Commission. Doesn't really matter how you feel about that particular issue. But when the legislature needed people with expertise on both sides of the issue, they went to the Women's Commission. And one of the benefits of a commission on boys and men is that there would be a resource for legislators, whether you're doing education, whether you're doing homeless issues, whether you're doing public health, whether you're doing literacy. Right now, it's like they have to pick and choose and, let's get this statistic from the Kaiser Family Foundation.
Like where do we go to for this expertise?
Where do we go to for this expertise? Because right now it's really hard to get, Blair has spent a considerable amount of time trying to create a data set that is free of bias. It's just data, because that's what you want your legislators to have when they're making these really important statewide decisions and creating this policy. And that's what the Women's Commission does. And if we had something like that, they would have a resource, at least of facts, so that they could start this conversation.
Anyone else?
Yeah, well, you alluded to this, but what is the pushback against forming this commission?
Just the title. It was my law professor who I barely got it out of my out of my mouth. And he was like, no. And I was like, can I just tell you why this is important to me as a mom of boys and who has been around boys my entire life? And he's like, yeah, you're really going to have to work hard, which is why you came up with that one sheet. Here's something you can digest, Mr. or Miss Senator. This is something you can digest.
And I'll also add, so we have actually thought of other names. How can we brand this in a way that doesn't trigger an immediate defense from people? Boys and men, how would they be deserving of a commission? So ideas that have been brought to us are like at-risk boys and men. But other reasons that we've heard are, for example, well, commissions are meant for protected classes of people. On that one, we think that's a misunderstanding of anti-discrimination laws, which prohibit discrimination based on sex or gender. They don't specifically protect one sex or one gender. We've heard that, the governor would veto it, so why give it a hearing? Why waste any time on it? To that one, we say, maybe right now that's the stance that he's in, but it's our job as advocates and as a grassroots movement to build enough support so that if we can get it through the legislature, by that time he would see there's enough support for this. He would understand the reasons for it, that he wouldn't veto it. And then one of the earliest slides I started with was, aren't we in a male-dominated society? Isn't this a man's world? Those are words straight from one of the key legislators who was in a position to allow this to have a hearing or not. And so it is kind of a mindset thing that we have work to do to overcome. One more question. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I just have to ask, do you guys have a little time afterward if people want to come and introduce themselves and ask some questions? Okay, great. Also, as a speaker gift, we are going to give a gift in your name to Northwest Harvest, which is focusing on providing food for families who have food insecurities. So thank you very much. Next week, our speakers are going to come and talk about Yakima's new crime lab. Chris Wickenhagen, Kathy Gill, and Sheriff Bob Udell. That'll be here at the Convention Center. We don't have any committee meetings, so we are officially... Oh, we do? Okay, we have a Jobs for Youth committee meeting right over there with Noelle Moxley. Thank you. That wasn't on my notes, so... Anyway, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.